is December 13th, 2021.
Yes.
This is the regular meeting of the library board. Angie, can we have a call to order, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Present.
Mr. Bigby,
Present.
Dr. Murtada, present. Ms. Payne,
Present.
Reverend Robinson,
Present.
Judge Salinas,
Present.
Ms. Tribble. Present. We do have a quorum.
All right, folks, thank you so much. The chair recognizes the quorum. We move on to number 3, the public comment and communication section. The public has been invited to the board meetings. At every board meeting, we open with time for public comment. We welcome feedback from the public about our Indianapolis libraries. And at this time, when the public may address the library board, if there are several of you representing the same group, please select a spokesperson. Please do not repeat the same comments someone else has offered. Please note that also that this public comment time is not the appropriate forum for commenting on matters related to alleged employee misconduct. Any such matters should be brought promptly to the attention of the library's interim CEO or the Human Resource Department, where matters can be properly addressed in compliance with established library policies and procedures. A 5-minute time limit will be allowed for each speaker. Each speaker should give their name and their address. And we're going to start with Connie Thompson. Connie? Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Connie Thompson. I live in Morgan County, but I work in Marion County, so I pay taxes to this library system, and also I regularly use the library here in Marion County as well. I wanted to speak a little bit about the ongoing climate study, and also some of the demands of the local union in the library. So as a community member of the Indianapolis community, I saw the news recently about this climate study being the contract was given to Ice Miller, which is a law firm. It's a company that has never ever done a climate survey or any survey for that matter ever. They asked $100,000, which is a lot more than the second highest bid, which was $27,000, which was still very high among the bids. So, I mean, I'm wondering why the library is spending $100,000 on a law firm to give a survey that's not backed up by a lot of evidence or done by like a law firm. The law firm doesn't even represent the people in the library. The people at that law firm definitely do not look like the people who work at the library or go to the library. That's for sure. And that like we have Dr. Murtada right here, who has been a long-time advocate for the workers in the library and the patrons in the library and all of their concerns, and that like people trust her to listen to our concerns. And she offered to do this climate survey and was declined because it's supposedly a conflict of interest. But I mean, I guess you could call it a conflict of interest because it kind of conflicts with your interests, right? That's the conflict of interest here. So I'm wondering, like, are you trying to sabotage this climate study? You're trying to make it not work? Because from my friends who work at the library, from other people I know who go to the library, like, they don't trust this climate survey because it's coming from this law firm that charge $100,000 to do what is essentially a Scantron. So it's it looks shady. It looks really shady, and it looks wrong. It doesn't look like what a climate survey should look like. It doesn't look like you're actually concerned about seeing the climate in your library. It looks like you're concerned about finding out how you can shut people up. So with that being said, I hope that this climate study does reveal things to the library board, but also even before the climate study is completed, like, people have been making demands for months and months. People have been coming to these board meetings, which is, not easy to come out after work to make the extra effort to come to a board meeting. People have been speaking directly to members of the board, and have been making their demands clear. And like, you can start listening now. Like, people have been saying for months that that they want Judge Jose Salinas off the board, and that's just not been listened to. And he was recently reelected to the board anyway, despite months of demands. So if you're really trying to listen to your employees, why won't you listen to that demand? That's been abundantly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, how do you say your last name? Well, is it Rogus? Rogers, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Ken. I live in Marion County, and I just wanted to say I have a partner who works for the library. I know the environment is not very good. She deals with microaggressions on a daily basis, and that the library should be in the hands of the workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Noah? Noah, how do you say your last name?
Wyman.
Just want to make sure. Okay, Wyman, thank you.
So I also am here because I read in the Indianapolis Recorder, I read about the climate study, and I was struck by what I read. It seemed to me from the way that it had been described by library workers and by the journalists that it's just more evidence of deep corruption here in Indianapolis politics. Massive handouts of public money to private firms are not going to negate the anger of people, whether it's the public or library staff. One thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that the library is a public good, and it's being run like a business, complete with the sort of gangster-esque control of funds being used corruptly to inure to the benefit of the buddies of people who are well-connected members of the IndyPL board. It doesn't cost $100,000 to find out that the library's leadership is mired in racism and nepotism. We've been telling you that for free for months. Netus resigned in response to the people's demands, and we demand that Judge Jose Salinas also immediately resign. The workers do not have faith in this leadership, even if the survey designed by the buddies does come back and say that they do so. The public does not have faith in your leadership. We all deserve a library that works for us and that is responsive to our needs. As long as Jose Salinas is on the IndyPL board, as the board president, or even as a member, our library suffers. I do want to say, that on the flip side, the work that's being done by our library workers, especially ASME 3395, have been fighting for a better library, and I hope that they win. All power to them.
Thank you. Dr. Derek Ford.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for letting me speak. Last time I spoke here was in July to demand the immediate resignation of Jackie Nitis. And I think it's an incredible testament to the power of the union, of the library workers and the community, some board members, that we finally won that demand after a very long summer of listening to her say that she would step down under no circumstances. But that wasn't our only demand. We were also calling for the resignation of Judge Jose Salinas, who muted Bree Flannelly's microphone in the May board meeting. The climate survey really shows the relevance and timeliness of that ongoing demand. Salinas defended paying as many of our taxpayer dollars to conduct this survey as was possible. And that wasn't the only problem. I was able to take a look at the survey, and the survey asked questions about how employees feel about inclusivity and diversity. And as the previous speaker noted, you don't really need a $100,000 survey to figure that out. That's been communicated in board meetings, organizing meetings, protests, and elsewhere, organized by the library union, but also their extensive community support. Further, surveys don't produce unexpected or sort of miracle results, right? In fact, implementing surveys, it's basically death by committee, right? Death by survey. You sort of hope to, drag the process out for long enough, people forget about it, they get tired, they go home, and you can just sort of go on with, things as usual. And, you know, it's basically a way of looking like something is being done while everything remains the same. There already exists a plethora of best practices for how to improve inclusivity, diversity, and equity, and worker empowerment in library systems and in all public institutions. We believe that the $100,000 would better be spent paying for a union-led initiative to address some of these problems. Workers are the ones who experience this, and they're the ones who know the problems and who have the solutions. So we support our library workers because they support us. I'm a researcher and a teacher, and the librarians are absolutely essential to my teaching, to my research, to my career. They support the struggles of all working and oppressed peoples in the city. They show up for Medicare for All and many other struggles. They care not only about their members, but about all working people in the city. And so I'm really happy to say that I'm here for the long haul for the Ask Me Local 3395. Thank you so much.
Stephen Lane.
My name is Stephen Lane, and I'm a proud resident of the Hallville neighborhood. Tonight, I represent the ghost of Christmas past, as I no longer work for IndyPL and want to serve as a reminder to what marginalized staff go through in this institution under the current board and interim leadership, since former staff are not allowed to participate in the current climate improvement process. I served as the special collections librarian at Central Library. I was the second person to hold that title and was met with unrealistic expectations of running an entire special collections without the necessary institutional support. I made it the longest in the position of just 2 years over my predecessor, who worked in the position for a little over a year. Staff confided in me in all kinds of grievances throughout my time at NDPL, such as experiencing sexual harassment by male supervisors and workplace harassment, and had no institutional outlet to bring up our grievances, so only confided in other employees. But as we know, that's not enough. I now work for the University Library at IUPUI in their special collections, and I must say the difference in experiences from working at NDPL is night and day. I have a lot of support from administration and staff. The silos of NDPL create a lot of opportunities for workplace abuse of a profession that has been feminized to perpetuate a toxic environment of workers doing more labor with less money and resources. I come here today as a former employee of NDPL and now a patron of NDPL to stand in solidarity with NDPL library workers and the library union, because I know that a better public library is possible. It is unfortunate that Judge Jose Salinas continues in his role of board president, especially after what was witnessed in May when he intentionally and disrespectfully silenced the microphone of a Black woman, former employee, who was speaking on her experiences of experiencing racism and ableism in the work environment. Salinas should have been dismissed from his position, and the board should have elected a more competent and active member to lead the board in our public library institution. Our city deserves better leadership than a yes person who was willing to do the bidding of the Grinch who stole Christmas. And it took a lot of effort from the community and staff to push him and other board members to do the right thing and fire the former CEO, who emboldened a toxic and racist work environment. Yet, if Santa can make miracles happen on 34th Street, then so can this board if they listen to the people who are here tonight and actually make connections with staff and patrons. In all of my 8 years working at NDPL, I only saw 3 board members actively engage with the library system. Those board members are Drs. Payne, Murtada, and former board member Dr. Terry Jett. So I have a New Year's challenge for the rest of the board, who are sure to get cold this Christmas for their inadequate leadership. Board President Salinas, board members Bigsby, Biederman, Robinson, and Tribble, I challenge you to spend once a week in a library building, actually spend time with staff and patrons, attend a library program, and make connections to the Indianapolis Public Library that you are leading. It has been a nightmare before Christmas to work for the Indianapolis Public Library. I was not supported, I was not empowered, and there are abusive members of executive leadership, such as one director who intentionally would change the temperature of this building to see if workers in processing would complain, because according to them, they always have something to complain about. That kind of abusive behavior needs to be rooted out of this institution, and people like that should suffer the harshest of consequences, just as we did the CEO. The board approved and agreed to implement a forward and progressive strategic plan that addressed many of the concerns of the library in our diverse city. As a professional in the field, I offer that the strategic plan be followed and implemented. I suggest the board move forward with hiring a new CEO who is equipped to handle the issues and implement the strategic plan. Our interim CEO is part of the old guard and scared to make any major changes or implement the strategic plan because he felt tied to the whims and wishes of a tyrant CEO. We need real leadership for our public library. We need real changes to go into effect. I wish we had better than the interim CEO and the re-elected board president, but we have to start with what we have. And if Salinas won't step down, then he must listen to the public and library workers. He must engage with library workers to do the right thing, because this toxic work environment is a detriment to our city and to patrons who pay into this library system to serve them and us a vital resource to information. Now that this board knows better, it must do better. And it doesn't have to wait until the results of the climate improvement study to actually start making improvements. And to finish with a short excerpt from the Christmas Carol, as the ghost of Christmas past takes Scrooge on a tormented trip down memory lane. "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were the shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost, "that they are what they are, so do not blame me." Thank you.
Michael Torres.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Torres. I'm president of ASME Local 3395, representing Indianapolis Public Library workers. I'm going to be the part of library workers' year-end report and things to come. As part of this Christmas Carol thing. Conversations with library leadership began quickly after Jackie was fired early September. Our union leadership heard administration express the need for open conversation and eagerness to better the relationship with the union. Because the former CEO and HR director often went unchecked when referencing the union, our remedy was to include union leadership in the executive committee and manager committee meetings. If trust is to be rebuilt, then union presence in these committees and discussions is an easy fix. We haven't had an answer on that yet. We aim for union leadership to be included in these committees and these conversations. And we'd like to report at next month's board meeting that a resolution has been agreed upon. Tonight's appointment list of wages that are on your agenda is a standard procedure. Normally, the union is presented a wages proposal to sign off, but has not happened, and it's mute after you sign off on it tonight. So we aim to bring this entire process back to the negotiations table before any wages are advertised. Also concerning benefits, when the union learned a bonus was being considered for 2021, we asked if that money could be used for an additional percentage added to our hourly rate instead. We were told no, because if the hourly rate was increased, next year's salary budget would start off higher. Okay, don't we have a year to work on the budget to present to the City County Council? I didn't see that as a problem. When you consider that December 12th, the December 12th, 2021 article from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics stated the all items index rose 6.8% for the 12 months ending November, the largest 12-month increase since the period ending June 1982. And the November 11th, 2021 Bloomberg article states, Average hourly earnings rose 4.9% in October from the prior year, higher than the pandemic rate. But the pay boost was not enough still to keep up with inflation running at 6.2% last month. With the expectation of the city shutting down, with the exception of the city shutting down last March, our members have not stopped working since this pandemic began almost 2 years ago. Service interruptions were minimal but system-wide. Even with the very publicly debated disagreements between library leadership and the union on the subject of weddings continuing, we showed up to serve our community. We know that extra percentage would have helped. Budgets have been planned way in advance before the union is consulted, and that has to change. We aim to be there at the beginning. Quite a few people at the top are doing phenomenally well when it comes to salaries. For example, I've been here for 24 years and I've not even hit midpoint in my salary range. In comparison, a few have been here way less time, a few months are closer to their midpoint than I am. I'm not making this about me. It's happening system-wide. As far as the climate study, last month, ICE Miller facilitator Myra Selby gave an update on the climate improvement study. And as a GO team member, I'd like to say our group is taking on a lot of work and a huge responsibility. I strongly suggested in our last GO team meeting that the entire process be spelled out to staff from beginning to end as many ways as needed if they wanted healthy participation, because once ICE Miller collects and analyzes the data, we are on our own to make any changes. It's not clear who will be responsible for deciding what changes to make. Maybe that's coming, but I'm concerned any unknowns could hinder participation. And if this fails, will we be blamed? It feels like a catch-22 situation. Our community deserves to know that their library workers who are providing the services and resources they ask for are in a positive environment. That's our commitment. Thank you.
Russell Lewis. Oh, Russell? Oh, he's part of the presentation, so he's not part of the. All right, thanks, everyone. All right, we're gonna move on to item, Angie, there's no one from the public that submitted letters, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment. Always in these meetings, I like to appreciate the comments that are made from you in attending. And those who are not a part of the union. I had no idea that you were going to be talking today about the survey and about Judge Salinas, but I want to thank you for bringing forth the feelings, the emotions, but also the keen knowledges that are important. Connie Thompson, you spoke about the climate study and the law firm. Ken, you spoke about microaggressions and how the library should be in the workings of the workers. Noah, you spoke about the judge and how you stand with AFSCME. Dr. Ford, you spoke about the climate survey. You also spoke about the plethora of best practices that I am aware of those, and those are really important. Thank you. Stephen, you also spoke from the ghost of the past, but also your work in the present. This is so very important. And you talked about the silos and the workplace harassment that you and others have experienced. Michael, when you spoke about the percentage, I am remiss for not having thought even more about what that salary in terms of percentage would have meant and how very important it is. And talking about the midpoint in salaries is something we all must pay attention to. How can someone work for over 20 some years and not have reached that point? But you said it's not about you, it's about equity for everyone. The entire process does need to be spelled out for the climate improvement process. Once again, I did not know that that was going to be the intention. In fact, I asked, what was the major issues that we needed to pay attention to. Thank you all for it. And as a member of this board, we cannot and we will not, and I know I can speak to the commitment of the rest of our folks who are paying attention to what must be done to bring about equity, but to also bring about change. Thank you so very much.
Would any other board member like to comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the executive, regular, and special meeting of the November 22nd, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held November 22nd, 2021?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on the matter? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby, Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item B is the annual meeting, November 22nd, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the annual meeting held November 22nd, 2021? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to the minutes of the special meeting. Is there a motion to approve the special meeting that was held on August 10th, 2021?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the committee reports. Finance Committee, Dr. Payne.
Carolyn, could you come up, please?
I'm here.
All right.
Good evening, everyone.
What page are you gonna be on?
I'm going to start with page 24.
Thank you.
This is the treasurer's report for our activity through November 30th. On page 24, we have a highlight of our revenue and expenditures for our operating fund. And I'd just like to say we're on track for where we have been historically. I do not see any concerns with our revenues or expenditures. If you turn to page 25, the graphs will reflect that we're on track to like 2019 activity. I did want to report fines revenues are down about 90,000 from last year because we did implement elimination of fines. And we have seen our other services and charges like fax and printing go up 90,000 from last year. So because of the pandemic, there's more activity this year. And I did notice that we're on track to end the year where we projected we would with our long-term plan. Are there any specific questions about the treasurer's report?
Yes, I have a specific question. The final comment that was made by the president of the union spoke about the 6.2% inflation and spoke about how significant it is in terms of what we are adjusting in terms of our budget. How are we going to address the issues of inflation? Do you have a thought about that, or has that been part of the conversation that's been planned?
It is part of the conversation. We want our library staff to be able to afford the cost of living. I do know we got some information back that some revenue sources are not panning out the way we had hoped. John may be able to speak to those.
So part of our long-term funding plan to combat things like inflation and other cost, increases and things like that was to pursue additional income tax revenue from the city. That conversation's ongoing. I sent the board an update email about that earlier this week. It does not look like we will be able to count on that as quickly as we may have hoped. So we're going to be continuing that conversation and continuing to try to identify other sources of revenue for the library. Because I agree that mathematically, you know, inflation is increasing faster than we can increase our salaries, faster than we've increased our salaries in the past. I would say that, you know, we budget for 2021 in the year 2020. So we did not know yet what the inflation number would be for 2021 when we budgeted for 2020. It only means we can fix it as we move forward, I guess is the best way that I can put it.
You mentioned other sources of revenue. What are some of those other sources of revenue in addition?
In addition to the income tax. So, well, so this is very off the cuff. So, you know, don't quote me on this. This may or may not be what we end up doing. Part of the process to create some of these plans is going to be with our new permanent CFO when that person arrives. But I would say some of the things that we've been talking about are issuing our debt a little bit more creatively to free up operating money for things like salaries and ongoing commitments. And there are trade-offs to that. So for example, if we committed to funding some initiative with bond money and the city council decided they don't want to issue any more bonds or something to that effect, and I'm nutshelling really tightly here, that could put us in a position where we couldn't carry out whatever that initiative is that we funded with bond money. So, but that's an option that's available to us because our main source of revenue, which is property taxes, is effectively capped right now. I mean, we're effectively maximized. So if we rely solely on that funding source going forward, we're simply not going to be able to gain ground on an inflation number that's outpacing us. Does that make sense?
I certainly understand the reliance on the property tax. That's why I was asking about the additional opportunity for other revenue and what might we be aware of and what might be pursued. I believe that when the president spoke of understanding that beforehand, before we approved on the increase for this one-time increase, the opportunity could have been one that we were presented with an alternative plan, and we did not consider it. And I'm starting to feel as if we're making some more mistakes moving forward, and that's very disturbing, especially since we know that this staff has been a significantly dedicated staff. And how might we make sure that they are paid in the way that they deserve to be paid, instead of paying for things that may not have been as beneficial as they could be benefiting. I want to make sure that we all of us as board members truly understand the fiscal implications of the decisions that we're making. And if there are other alternatives, how might we find those alternatives and pay attention to the union being a part of the discussions? The other point that the union had been represented at the committee members in the past, and we're not represented at the committees in the past, and we're not represented this time, makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I understand.
I would ask that in the future going forward, that representatives from the union be in part of all of these types of discussions about our fiscal affairs.
Right.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Payne.
No, I was just agreeing with everything that Dr. Murtada is saying. It concerns me that I know that there are some employees that haven't had a raise in years. And we need to look at that. I have a question too. I know that the public school and the public library are certainly two different entities. But did the library receive any COVID funds or any federal funds because of COVID?
We did receive some COVID funds. Those were one-time funds intended for the purchase of things like Chromebooks and hotspots for connectivity for sending home. We could not have used that, is my understanding. Carolyn can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that we could not use that money for salaries and people expenses. I do want to say just real quickly to Dr. Murtada's point, which is a strong point about the bonuses. I feel, and I know Michael knows I feel this way because he and I have talked about this in one-on-one conversations. Salaries are the most important problem the library faces right now. It's very obvious when we go to the job market and try to compete for candidates that we are being out-competed. That is observable, that is true. I agree with that 100%. I do want to say there was no opportunity for us to use that $100,000 of bonus money for ongoing salaries because that savings came from positions that were temporarily vacant over the course of the year. And we budget each of those positions as if they are going to be occupied for 100% of the year. And we also budget them such that if an employee chooses to take advantage of the full range of library benefits, that we can fund that too. And sometimes employees don't choose to do that. And sometimes, jobs become vacant. And that's why we had savings this year that we were able to reallocate as bonuses. So while I
just wanna
agree that
make
we,
one clarity there. I was
Yes,
not
please.
referring to the $100,000 for
Oh,
ice milling.
okay.
I was not
I-
referring to that.
I wasn't either. I was talking about the money that we issued as bonuses.
Yeah.
Okay,
That came from the savings from not hiring new people.
correct. From temporary vacancies.
I concur. No one could have predicted the inflation. And going forward, making sure all our staff have a living wage is important. And does anyone else have a comment or a question?
It's just critical.
I agree, Dr. Payne. Any more questions? Is there a motion to accept the treasury report for November 2021?
So moved.
So,
Second.
so moved.
Any further discussion on the matter?
Just one point, I do want us to have some, I don't know what the process would be at this point, but at what point will we be making a decision about making sure that the union be involved in our fiscal discussions and decision-making with the committee?
We can make that decision immediately. We budgeted for 2022. I mean, the budget was approved in September. We were budgeting back in May for that process. So we have plenty of time to get out in front of the next budget cycle.
Any more discussion or questions on the treasurer's report? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Move on to resolution 66.
Yes, this is a resolution to transfer operating money to the rainy day fund. The library staff is recommending board approval of a $1 million transfer from our operating fund to our rainy day fund. And the purpose is to set aside funds from one-time savings in 2021 to assist in meeting the long-term capital goals of the library, and also to assist in any fluctuations to help even out spending on our actual budget, to help assist to avoid, reductions in expenditures. These changes have no impact on the total budget. Per the Indiana Code 36-1-8-5.1, we are allowed to transfer up to 15% of our original budget of any fund into the rainy day. So while I calculated the total that we would be allowed for the original budget is $7.5 million, we are only requesting $1 million transfer into the rainy day fund. And are there any questions about this?
You said the purpose is to assist in any fluctuations. What type of fluctuations are you anticipating?
You never know how the economy is going to turn, and there might be capital needs. In years past, we have had delays in our property tax revenues, our cash coming in, and we've had to use tax anticipation notes and pay interest on debt. So this would allow us to pull in if there's any capital needs to spend money on during that period where we were low on cash and things like that.
Thank you, Carol.
We don't anticipate that now, right?
No,
Just in case.
it's just in case. I mean, even during the pandemic in March of 2020, we were finance was very concerned that property tax revenue was not going to come in. I know EJ worked closely with the city to monitor the payments. And fortunately, property taxes did not seem to be hit as other sectors of the economy. So our revenue actually maintained during the pandemic, and we were able to keep paying our staff the whole time. And I do know this past year, we realized in the fall that there was some excess that we could also spend on one-time bonus for staff this year. So this is good times where we can, send some money out to staff versus, maybe rough times where we have to not give any raises or whatever. And I do know EJ and I and HR did look at the bonuses, and to some of our pay grades at the bottom, this bonus did allow us, at least for this year, to give them an increase, other than just the regular 3% that they'll see in 2022. And it was kind of a quick decision this year. But we did not mention this earlier, but we appreciate all of our staff working during the pandemic and hanging in there with us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve resolution 66? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on it? Seeing none. Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman, Mr. Bixby, Dr. Murtada, Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Appreciate it. We'll move on to Diversity Policy and Human Resources Committee. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have two resolutions for consideration for board action tonight, but before that, I have a few other points under the committee purview that I'd like to just give an update on. The first is to ask Dr. Payne to discuss the progress on racial equity training by the board and library staff.
Be very happy to do that. Thank you, Hope. Well, let me explain first of all, because everybody probably in the audience doesn't know that the Indianapolis Public Schools has been doing virtual racial equity training really since 2015. Every now board member of the library has gone through the training. In fact, Dr. Murtada will be going through twice because she went through in 2015 when we first started. And now, since there have been some upgrades in the training, she's going through again in January. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to thank the library for paying for this training for our board members. It's very, very important. And also, I wanted to recognize that, wait a minute, let me get this straight. We have got managers, supervisors, librarians, and public service associates who are also going through this very, very rigid, very good racial equity training. So far, 171 of our staff people from the library have gone through. There's a total of 306 that will be going through. And I think it's the foundation, am I correct, John, who is paying for this?
No, I believe that's coming from our training budget. Is that right, Tisha?
Okay.
Oh, it is the foundation? I apologize. It is the foundation.
I thought, okay, very good, because I know that Roberta, who is over the foundation, went through the training herself. It was quite, she was very moved by the training. And so I want to acknowledge that and thank library board members we even had a session today. Hope, how was it?
It was very informative, and can't wait to get back tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. The other thing that I wanted to mention is just about the climate study. As you know, that part of the climate study is a survey to all employees. The survey is anonymous and it went out last week. It's part of the climate study that's being conducted by ICE Miller and the Racial Equity Solutions team. As of now, we have had strong participation. It will be open for a total of 2 weeks. As part of this study, there will also be staff and board interviews and focus groups. To maintain its independence, ICE Miller will not be giving additional information until the project is completed early next year. On a personal note, given recent public comments, I want to be clear that ICE Miller will deliver an independent assessment with actionable items. Judge Myra Selby and her and the Racial Equity Solutions team is comprised of diverse, highly skilled, and experienced professionals. They have done this kind of important work many times. You can find that information on their website. And to hear anyone question their credentials or their commitment is disappointing. This work is meant to provide, to improve the library for everyone. And we hope that everyone will continue to work together toward the goal of the climate study. Any questions or?
Hope, this is a question that I have. Following the climate study, when we look at the recommendations, will ICE Miller also be doing the training that will come along with the recommendations?
The training was not specifically part of the statement of work, but one of the things that we did talk about was instilling capacity within the library. That is part of the work of the GO team that has been established, that's representative of the library, that is working along and consulting ICE Miller as they conduct the study.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. You said that that there will be no report from the climate. Can you repeat that again? That there will be no report till when?
Until early next year when the process is completed.
Why would there be no report until the process is completed? Why would there be no updates?
There will be updates. For example, I gave one today, right? But we won't hear from the contractor. They will be in touch with the committee and management, but as part of maintaining independence, they will complete the process and return to us with the final report of their findings.
I find that truly troubling, that the process would be complete without giving us a sensibility about the work, how it's progressing, and them coming to this group and making it clear about the kinds of things that are being accomplished and not waiting until it is complete. And the reasoning behind that, when you say that it's so that it is problematic in any way, equity studies frequently come back to the group and say, this is how we're progressing. These are the challenges. These are the strengths. These are the weaknesses of what we're finding thus far, so that modifications can be made. And that's a critical part of doing a climate study, not waiting until a project is completed. So I would find that truly, and I submit to the board that we request that that not be the case.
So the GO team actually is part of the process of receiving progress and giving feedback, as well as as well as reports into management. It's not being done out of sight, but just as part of the process, ICE Miller will come back with their findings after they have conducted the surveys and taken the stock of climate.
You said that it would be completed, that the work would be completed, and that at that point we would hear from them. Is that different from what you're saying now?
To the board,
And I ask that the board not wait until the work is completed to get that kind of feedback. That's very unusual for a professional organization, just as you described, to wait until the completion of a project, a significant one at this point, and one that the union has spoken to just now. And again, I did not know that the union was going to be speaking to it today. But clearly their input, as you said, the Go team is great. But how does that come to the board and let us know what types of things are going on? What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, like a SWOT analysis? So I would ask that of the board.
So from my understanding, Mr. Torres is still here, right? The Go team is in the process, right?
Yes,
They're participating.
yes,
They have input in the process.
absolutely.
And we're going to get updates as we move forward.
Correct.
From you, not from the Ice Miller team.
Which comes from the Ice Miller team.
We need to have as full participation from our staff and from the people who will take the survey as possible in order to get a clearer and the best understanding of where we're at and where we need to be in 5 years or in 3 years. And I concur with both. We need to know what's going on in the process, but we also need to have independence on Ice Miller's part, because everybody in this library system needs to be confident that no one is influencing the process one way or the other. I think we need to let Ice Miller go about the independence of their work. But I don't think, I think I'm going to reserve my judgment in terms of the process until we hear these updates. I'm pretty sure they're going to be comprehensive updates. It's not going to be the full report that we get monthly, but it's going to be comprehensive, I would imagine.
We were just told that this was an update that we just received, and that update did not tell us very much of anything. And so if that's considered an update for the sake of independence, that's truly problematic.
So I think it's really important that we have hired Ice Miller for their expertise on this process. They have advised us that the best route forward is to let them do the work, to work with the Go team, to do the interviews with the board and other stakeholders, and to come back when they've reached the conclusions of their work. They are providing us with updates in terms of the steps in the process, but other details will not be available until the final report is done. I think it's important to protect the anonymity for our employees, and that they have a sense that that it's being carried out in a way that both honors and protects their interests and expression.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about anonymity and the honesty and integrity of a process. That's not the issue. What I am raising is the problematic notion that independence, anonymity, and etc. would be disturbed in any way, shape, or form by a full update, not one that's merely saying the work is concluding, the work is moving along. That's inadequate for an update for this board, and for this board to accept it as if that's going to cause anonymity to be lost is naive. Anonymity would not be
What information would you like
lost
to
with
hear,
an update.
Dr. Matado?
An update that really does speak to the kinds of goals, how we're moving along with the goals, how are those kinds of challenges that the union has just brought up, how are these things being addressed? Because that's what a SWOT analysis does. And so we're familiar with, I'm sure all of us are, with that kind of thing. I don't want to delay the meeting because it's already after 7:25. But the specificity of it, I'll put it into writing as to what kind of update would be far more sufficient. If that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think we have to let them complete that work. The survey is in process, and the interviews and additional stakeholder interviews have not been completed. And so we don't have that information because it's in progress.
So I think an email with the information that you think that we need is important. And if it in any way conflicts with what Ice Miller thinks they want to reveal at the next meeting, then they can, and they can let us know why, okay? But yes, but we wanted your expertise as a liaison, so we know what the process is. So yes, an email would be good. Okay,
Judge Salinas,
yes, ma'am.
are the updates, maybe this should go to Hope, are the updates being given to us as HR committee people? Is that where the updates are coming? Or there's pretty much nothing till the process is over?
I've
Th-
passed
this-
along that information to the committee, Dr. Payne. You know, we haven't had meetings.
Right, but we will
Scheduled.
be.
Absolutely. And during those meetings, we will pass along progress, but we will not pass along any of the results until they're final.
Right. Well, I know I'm not talking about the results. I'm talking about information on the process and updating us as to those kinds of things. And my question is, will that kind of information just go to committee members and not to the board?
You mean updates like what I just gave? That will go to both.
Yeah, those
It would go to
kinds of,
both. It would go to
whatever
committee.
they tell us, whatever they tell you, does that come to the HR committee?
It would go to the committee and the board, yes.
Okay.
Both are public meetings, so. All right, I want to thank everyone for that discussion.
Great,
Resolution 67.
not quite.
Oh, one more?
I have one more thing to bring up. The CEO search.
Oh, yeah.
We mentioned last week, we are working on, the search is moving forward. We know that it's important. We are looking for a firm to head a national search for the new CEO. We have a draft of an RFQ, a request for qualifications that we're completing this week. We will share it with the board once we get the final timeline filled in. The committee has reviewed it. We plan to post it by next week. It's going to be a thorough process. It will be lengthy. We will be using the expertise of the search firm to help us with determining how the process should go, and also to understand how long a national search will take. So, but our expectation is generally that we will have a new CEO on board by the third quarter of next year. So with those additional updates, then I'll call on our interim HR director to talk about resolution on the appointment list.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here to present Resolution 67-2021. It's the appointment list. This is a routine resolution which we present to the list of all the employees with their projected salary for 2022. This is followed by the resolution from last board meeting, which we changed the bottom of the employees for the minimum for pay grade 3 to 1250 and pay grade 4 for 1517.
Are there any questions from the board as to resolution 67? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 67?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion on resolution 67? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman.
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby.
Approved.
Dr. Murtada.
Approved.
Ms. Payne.
Approve.
Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Resolution 68.
It will be Shanika.
My name is Shanika Hayward. I'm the IT director, and I'm coming for the annual renewal of our acceptable use policy. It's for the Indiana Code 36-12-12, which covers our policy for internet and other computer networks for the library. It's renewed every year.
Any changes from last year?
There's no changes, and the attorney reviewed it.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
This is just a policy, right?
Yeah, you're required to review this policy on an annual basis by statute.
Sure.
As, the staff didn't have any updates. We also checked with checked on the applicable federal laws related to the Children's Internet Protection Act, as well as the Online Privacy Protection Act, to make sure there were no changes either in the federal statutes or the rules applicable to those, and there have not been any. So no changes relative to those matters were necessary either.
Does the board have any questions from Ms. Haywood or Robert with respect to the policy that we have to approve under Resolution 68? We do this every year. Yes. I see no questions. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 68? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Trimble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Just a quick question. One of the aspects of the policy, it speaks about the filtering of software. And one of the things we've had to do at the university is spend a lot of time looking at filtering software. Are there any new applications that we're examining, since we know that issues involving young people are increasing and there's so much concern about what's happening with young people and the use of the internet?
Oh, absolutely. With our cybersecurity, we actually have a meeting with Mr. Robert next year in January. So we are having that conversation, and also with our cybersecurity insurance company. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes,
wonderful.
yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Looking forward to hearing more about what types of new filters and what ways, because we know it's not foolproof, just as the policy does say.
Absolutely. You have a question?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Tamika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all for HR?
That's it. Yes.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you.
move on to facilities. Curtis?
We met, facilities committee met about the two resolutions that are before us about the Fort Bend project as well as the Glendale project. And I'll go turn it over to Mike.
Good evening, members of the board.
Good evening.
I'm here to present Resolution 69-2021 to approve the guaranteed maximum price for the Fort Benjamin Harrison Branch project. Tonight, we have from Ratio Architect Scott Hunt, who helped work on the project with his team. We have from Skillman Corporation, we have Victor Landfair, David Yancey, and Dan King, who are the project management team. And we also have Gary Davis from Davis Associates. Skillman and Davis are working together on the project. So if you have any specific questions, we'll be able to get specific answers.
So does the board have any questions of any of this individual or any of the individuals?
I think, did you want to talk about the
Yeah,
ratio?
I did want to point out, if you look at in your board packet, page 70 is a tabulation sheet of the utilization that the bidding brought to the project with the goals in the tab sheet. So the total utilization on the project to the base bids comes in at 22.25%, just under $2 million. And in the far right is a list of the contractors that will be utilized on the project as tier 2 and tier 3 contractors. I wanted to give you an idea of who's actually going to be participating on the project on site. So the resolution did go to the full committee with a recommendation to pass. from the committee. So no second is required from the committee.
Right. Well, I do need a motion from the commission.
I make the motion to approve resolution 69.
Is there? Okay, thank you for the second. We don't actually need one, but thank you. Is there any discussion on resolution 69?
Just like to make a comment. Yes, sir. That, when the committee met, we went through a very rigorous, questioning of the, contractors and asking them about the participation, minority participation. And we were well satisfied with, the answers and what they have tried to do to ensure that they have, participation of, a diverse group of contractors for the project. I just want you to know it was really a very vigorous and robust process.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion? Angie, can we have a call on the roll of resolution 69?
Mr. Biederman, Mr. Bixby, Dr. Matata, Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Resolution 70.
Yes, similar process, different team. We have Katie Gorjewski from KRM Architecture, who's here. We have Naaman Powers from Powers and Sons. We have Russell Lewis from Powers and Sons and Chris Kearns from Powers and Sons. If you look at your in your board packet, page 87 has a utilization report that's similar to what we had done before. Having the total utilization on the project is just under 52%, which is remarkable. And really, we were very fortunate in terms of finding a construction management team that had a wealth of people to go off and recruit for the projects. So again, this came through committee with a do pass recommendation.
Is there a motion?
It is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I will say they as well did a wonderful job with making sure that there's a lot of minority participation. We can see at 52%, that's excellent. The committee did also discuss what are some of the areas that could be improved, in which I think those are some of those specialized areas that they still have, issues with trying to get minority and minority participation in it, but they've done a wonderful job as well.
Dr. McFarland also requested from the contractors that they keep the board informed at every stage and every step of the way. And so I thought that was a great suggestion that she made, and I hope they'll comply.
I concur. Any further comments or discussion on resolution 70? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman, Mr. Bixby, Dr. Matata, Ms. Payne,
Approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Reverend Robinson, the Library Foundation.
Thank you, President Salinas. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the library board. The Library's Foundation Board of Directors approved our 2022 budget. Next year, we'll invest more than $2.6 million in 77 community action plans. Congratulations to the library and the Polish Center for launching the Encyclopedia of Indianapolis on November 18th. We are within 50,000 of completing our initial fundraising goal of 2.17 million. So far, we have received major support from the Lilly Endowment, Allen Whitehill Cruz Charitable Foundation, Annis Educational Foundation, the Indianapolis Foundation Library Fund, Nicholas Anoyes Jr. Memorial Foundation, Jackie Needis, and an anonymous donor. We have also received generous gifts from the Encyclopedia Civic Advisory Committee and the community. If you would like to support this project, text EOI to 317-967-9287 or contact us at 317-275-4700. Congratulations to the African American History Committee on a successful Fall Fest and Slam and Rhymes Challenge 15 held at Central Library on November 20th. The foundation was proud to support this event, which featured several poets and performers, as well as a moving keynote address by Sabrina Fulton, the mother of Trayvon Martin. The foundation thanks 217 donors who made gifts last month. Our top contributors were 92.3 WTTS, Live Nation Worldwide, and Comcast. If you should have an opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. This month, the foundation is proud to provide more than $180,000 to the library. Examples of major initiatives supported are the Career Center and the Herbert Simon Early Literacy Specialist position. Judge Salinas, that concludes my report for this meeting.
Reverend Robinson, thank you. Does the board have any questions of Reverend Robinson on the Library Foundation update?
Reverend Robinson, I just want you to again express our deep appreciation to the foundation for funding the racial equity training for our staff members.
Yes, I'm going to concur. Also. We'll move on to the report of the interim CEO. John?
Thank you, Judge Salinas. The first thing under my report is the travel resolution, which is the routine resolution regarding comings and goings to the library, new hires, changes, things like that, and then training and travel funding. So there's nothing unusual in that report, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you'd like.
Does the board have any questions on resolution 20 or 71? Is there a motion to approve resolution 71? Okay. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Being none, Angie, can we ever call the roll on resolution 21?
Mr. Biddle. Mr. Bixby. Dr. Murtada.
Approved.
Ms. Payne.
Approve.
Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
And Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item B.
Okay, item B is the updated interim CEO roadmap. To refresh your memory, this is the document that I created along with my interim EC team to try to chart the course forward from our previous CEO, identifying changes that we'd like to make, things that we're hearing directly from staff. Just to refresh your memory, these are things that I heard when I was visiting staff meetings, holding office hours in branches, hearing during town halls, all staff town halls, etc. So that's what this list is, to refresh your memory. The items that are in red are the items that have been updated for this month. And there are not as many as last month. We've only had about 3 weeks since our last meeting, and I was out of the office for one of those weeks. So not a whole lot under the CEO section. The bulk of this month's updates are in the CMSA section, Collection Management Services Agency. So what you'll see there are additions on how we are trying to begin to get better at tracking the representation in our collection. That's been something that's been extremely difficult for us to do as a profession basically forever. We just have not, as a profession, had a good system for identifying which books are representing which populations and how we're expending our dollars to pursue those goals. So the CMSA team is working hard on that. So you'll see, I know we're running late, so I'm trying to nutshell this as tightly as possible. So you'll see those little updates. And the one I specifically want to point out is that CMSA is working with Garrett Mason, our strategic planning and assessment officer, to create a dashboard so that staff can track the expenditures of the collection budget against these representation targets. So that is, again, not only something that we've never been able to do, but something we've never been able to even assess. So we're pleased that we're moving in the right direction. These are very preliminary steps, as has been observed, but we're trying to make progress, and progress is complex.
Hey, John,
Yes.
with regard to what you were just speaking about, is there any kind of software platform that is out there to help you in this area?
Well, yes and no. So, and our collection management director is in the audience. So Deb, you'll correct me if I get any details wrong, because I'm about to get off of my expertise just a little bit. But historically, we have relied on publishers to supply the data about the book that they're selling us. And publishers haven't been really tracking that. So it's pretty difficult for a library of our size to go through a collection of millions and millions of items and know which books have characters that represent the Asian American community, for example. It's just really hard to know that on an individual level. So in order to aggregate our entire collection into a platform like that is extremely difficult. So so technically, yes, the answer to your question is our catalog is supposed to do that. But if the data doesn't exist, then we can't pass that data along to patrons or staff, if that makes sense. Did I capture that more or less accurately, Deb? Yeah, thumbs up? Okay. Okay, no problem. Any other questions about that bit? Okay. So it's also worth noting in this section, Baker and Taylor, which is the vendor from whom we buy the bulk of our collection, has recently been purchased by one of its senior administrators, who is a Sikh man of color and a first-generation immigrant. So at a stroke, that will significantly impact our XBE spend in that budget section. So when you see that number change, I just want you to be aware that it will be a significant change, and that's what that change is about. Not necessarily anything that we initiated or anything that we did on purpose, but it's a change that happened in the landscape, and that will be reflected in the data. Okay, so I'll just stop there and ask, are there any questions about any section of the CEO roadmap that I can answer for you? Okay, thank you. So then I will move on to my next item, item C, which is a demonstration of our recently launched digital encyclopedia of Indianapolis. So we've been working in partnership with the Polis Center at IUPUI on this project for about 2 years now, since January of 2019. And Matt's going to tell us all about it, Matt and Alan. But first, I want to shout out the rest of the staff in the room who's worked on this project, and that's Mike Williams, Beth Van Allen, Jody Veradame, and Jessica Fisher. And of course, David Bodenhammer, who's not in the room, but is a major driving force and the author of the original Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. So thank you to all those folks. So yeah, I'll stop talking. I'll turn it over to Matt because he's got the much more exciting presentation.
Thanks, John. I will share my screen here and show you the online Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. I'm Matt and Allen from the Polis Center, a research center at IUPUI, and we partnered with the library to develop an online encyclopedia. You saw John held up the 1994 volume, which is maybe 400 pages, 1,600 encyclopedia entries about our city. And what we've done is, from an editorial side, we've updated those entries, added hundreds of new entries, and added a lot of things that weren't possible back then, like interactive atlases and timelines and things like that. And then from kind of a digital and web side, we've created, we've put all this information in a really dynamic, immersive platform. So the bread and butter of the encyclopedia are entries. We have entries about people, about places, about events, organizations, and topics. And then we also have other kinds of information like timelines. I mentioned the atlas, and features, which are like deep dives into particular topics and places. Let's look at an entry quickly here. If I search for Crispus Attucks High School, for example, open this up. We have, of course, a deep authoritative history on the high school, also an interactive map to show you where it's located. And our images in the encyclopedia are often drawn from partner agencies and organizations across the city, like this one, for example, that comes from the Indiana Historical Society. So if I click the source button, I'm actually taken back to the original Bass photo collection where this image resides digitally at the Historical Society. From this entry, we can link to a lot of other related entries. For example, Freeman Ransom was a booster and fundraiser for the school, raised money for a new organ in the high school. And if I click his link, we've got a link to his biography, but also to the neighborhood that's named after him. And in neighborhood entries, we again have a map. This time, instead of just showing a location, it has a boundary to give you a sense of where that neighborhood is. And then demographics about that neighborhood and how they've changed over time. And these are drawn from the Savvy Community Information System at the Polis Center. So that's how entries work. And then I mentioned there's timelines. For example, this timeline of the city of Indianapolis starts all the way back in 1816 and goes up through September of this year when Banker's Life was renamed Gainbridge. So we keep these really up to date and continue to develop them as new events happen, which was one of the great things about this encyclopedia being online and a digital resource. The atlas is cool. There's 6 different topics here that cover everything from nature and climate to our economy. We can look at, for example, this map shows where jobs are located across our region, right? So we see like a big bubble downtown, and we can see actually what those jobs are downtown, for example. 16,000 education jobs, 29,000 healthcare jobs. So these kind of interactive maps are a part of each atlas entry. And we also have data and charts about the economy or about whatever topic that the entry is on. So you can see, for example, how many small businesses are in the city and how is that different from county to county, right? Or how has the split between the manufacturing and service sector changed over time? So we can see, in the last 30 years, sort of a stagnant manufacturing and production sector compared to a quickly growing service sector, despite the steep job loss in service sector during 2020 and the pandemic. So this kind of data is important and informative and displayed here in like an engaging, interactive way. And lastly, I would point out the features, which, like I said, are deep dives into a particular topic. So for example, we have 4 of these published now. I'll show you the one on Indiana Avenue, which covers the history of the avenue from the pioneer times in the 19th century, when it was just kind of a dirt track leading out of the city, all the way to urban renewal and the development of the interstate and the IUPUI campus, and tries to wrestle with that history in a authentic and honest way. It also, of course, includes a lot about the musical heritage in the avenue, and has a lot of nice interactive features. Like, for example, this playlist has curated songs, just a sample of 10 songs, but stretching from 1870 to 1970 that reflect the performers and composers on the avenue, along with listening notes. And another important thing to point out are oral histories that are the shared experiences of residents of Indianapolis who lived on the avenue or spent time there, and can give us a real on the ground insight as to what that place was like. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. This is an exciting venture. You said you're wrestling with some of the history. How does that wrestling occur? That's one question, which is you've shared with me in the past about how certain data looks and how do we actually collect the controversy of the history. For example, when you were speaking about what was happening with gentrification at some of your presentations, how does that get settled?
Well, I'll give you an example. I just mentioned that Indiana Avenue feature, and a kind of troubling part of the avenue's, complex part of the avenue's history is the idea of vice or criminality on Indiana Avenue. It was a really popular place for gambling and sports books and things like that, which we know, right, that what is legal and what is illegal changes over time. It changes on how the law is enforced against different people with different colored skin. And so, I don't know, our authors like wrestled with that intentionally in that entry and highlighted the fact that, you know, a lot of arrests were made on the avenue for things like gambling and sports betting, which is now like perfectly legal, right? I could get on my phone right now and do it. And those kind of enforcement advices are sometimes used to not just kind of enforce the morals and mores of society, but to hinder and stop political organizing and things like that that were taking place on the avenue and in some of the taverns and clubs and things like that, where police raids were made. And so that's just one example, but like honestly representing that contested history is an important part of the encyclopedia.
Hi, I'm Dr. Managing Editor. I want to tell you that we have, throughout this process, brought in key informants throughout the community. We have an outstanding and advisory committee. We have an editorial, we put together an editorial board. And so we don't only grapple with this as staff. We ask for collaboration with the community throughout the process, and we are to continue to do so. So I just want to let you know that this is not just this staff that you see here, but this is very much a community project. And at every turn and every entry, I don't know now if you showed them, every entry there is a place for citizen contributions, suggestions, comments. So that is located throughout the site. And so we also are going to be working on developing community entries. We have a whole bunch that we need contributions from the community to fill out, because we did not have time to create full entries for 200 communities. We are working with the Religion and Urban Culture Project. We are working to create a bunch of congregational histories across cultures, across different faiths. So this is an ongoing project, and we are very interested in also filling out communities that were not well represented. So we had a Hispanic entry, but we want to look at the Peruvian community, the Colombian community, the Mexican community. So we are very, very committed to diversity and equity, and as an ongoing project involving the community and doing that.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Beth. Okay, so the last item on the CEO's report, item D, is going to be a presentation by Yana McGraw, who is our social worker, 159 days on the job. And I just want to mention, you may have seen some of the media coverage of Yana's work lately on WFYI and Indianapolis Monthly. I want to say thank you to the author of the Indianapolis Monthly piece, whose name is Mark Allen, who let us know that he was so impressed with Yana and her work. He donated his entire fee from that article back to the library in support of her work. So thank you to Mark, and take it away, Yana. Thank you.
I'm there. Thanks, awesome. Good evening. I want to thank you for this opportunity to allow me to come and talk about my first 159 days at the Indianapolis Public Library. I am Yana McGraw, as previously mentioned. Over the next few minutes, I want to provide some information on my background, provide information on my vision for the social work role, discuss the large and ambitious job description that you all provided me to take on. And then I'm going to break down my job description down by micro, macro, and meso, and how that applies to how I want to see this position grow in this program. As we come to a close, I will talk about the successes that I've had, the challenges, and next steps, and open the opportunity to answer any questions or comments or concerns that you might have. As you can see above, I'm a licensed social worker. I've been a licensed social worker for 2 years. I received my LSW in 2019 and graduated from IUPUI School of Social Work in 2012. So it took me a little while to get my LSW, but I got it nevertheless after many tries, but it's mine. So after graduating with my MSW, I worked as a home-based therapist. I've also worked with individuals experiencing homelessness, both veteran and non-veterans. And I've also worked with a primary care office, doctor's office, connecting those in the geriatric population with community resource, medication and housing assistance. And I've also had some experience working with the Indiana Department of Child Services. In 2008, I started there and worked for 5 years. So I've had a very wide experience working with those that are disadvantaged. And I also currently work in a mental health facility on the weekends, trying to work towards my clinical hours so I can have my LCSW. So when I started this job, July 7th, I was excited, scared, and coming into the library was a new career opportunity for me. My first few weeks, many of the staff were expressed how excited they were for me to be there, and many expressed their excitement for me to be on the job. As a social worker, that's not something we normally get. So I was a little skeptical of my colleagues, my new colleagues, and so I had to take a pause. Like, really, what are they trying to do here? Or they set me up for failure. So as I said, you see, as a social worker, those kinds of excitement greetings are not typical, as often society views social workers as individuals who take away individuals' children, or what a social worker does is not important. And I did not get the sense of that on my first day and my first few weeks at Indianapolis Public Library. It also did not help that prior to my start date, I started to begin to see a lot of controversy surrounding the library. And even one of my fellow social work colleagues advised me, no, you should not take that position. But if anyone knows me, I like challenges. I like to develop new things, and I pushed ahead anyway and saw this as an opportunity to build and move forward to help those that need help the most. So after completing my HR requirements on my first day, I was sent to Central and was given a job description with 21 bullet points. Anyone would have ran with that or ran away from that. Yes, I mean, 21 bullet points is what I was presented. I was shocked that the next thing that came to me was that I was told to do what I want with a position with limited direction. Social workers never get that. So I was very, very excited, but scared at the same time. So being scared and challenging to say, I hit the ground running and began looking for ways to connect to make the job fit the needs of the library system. After researching and reading many articles on social workers in the library, I connected with a group of social workers who work in the library and began to create my vision for this position. My vision is big. I think with a systematic lens that I come with this position, it will be best suited for Indianapolis Public Library. Above, I've broken down my vision through micro, macro, meso levels. This is what social workers do. The micro level is the day-to-day practice of the social work that interacts with those that need the help the most and are most vulnerable. The macro level involves working with staff and programming to address the needs of the patron. Program is non-clinical. It supports groups, training on staff on how to handle crisis, role modeling on how to interact with patrons that are challenging, and bring systems together externally and internally. My last approach is at the meso level, where I will utilize partnerships with those in the community to provide support on a broader scale, organizational, to bring any systematic change and education through needs assessment. So that is my vision. The next on this next slide is my 21 bullet points.
I'm not going to speak to each individually, as it's daunting, as to say it at the least. You can relax, as I'm not going to go through all of them here and bore you. This is just meant to be a visual of what is expected of me. On the next 3 slides, I will break this down more manageable, understandable by using micro, macro, meso concepts that will educate everyone on how this will drive the work that needs to be completed to move forward and develop the social work program. I think you should be on slide 6. Yeah. So micro. So from the 21, there's 6 bullet points that fall under micro to address my role. So that's currently the scan provided through providing services directly to patrons, assist them and coordinate with other agencies. It's important to note that I am a resource connector to programs in the community. Currently, I have set office hours at atrium hours that I'm open to patrons to come and meet with me. No appointment necessarily. I also commute once a week to West Indianapolis. Previously, I was going to Garfield Park, but this stopped at the end of November as my services were no longer needed. I will not be replacing this branch at this time. This will be reevaluate once the 2 students that I hope to have in January are onboarded. Collaboration with community partners is limited at this time, and I hope to grow this in 2022. Community partners and I am currently working with provide a warm handoff, and I'm able to inquire about the status of those patrons as well. So that's either through email or phone call. So macro is my next slide. Thank you. And this has 9 bullet points on my job description. Involves partnership with internally and externally to meet the needs of patrons while providing support to staff systematically. This has been difficult to say the least, as there are over 20 branches and one of me. With so many branches and unknown meetings, I still need time to develop how to move forward to provide internal help with staff. It is my hope that this will be a goal that can be accomplished sometime in 2022, but only time will tell, as there are so many layers of the library system that I still need to learn. When I have a better understanding of the line of communication and decision-making process, I am still trying to learn to try to put the pieces of the puzzle together. There's a great deal of hands-on training that will need to take place to help staff know how to interact with those mental health concerns, homelessness, poverty, and stages of change. Meso is my last point, and I spend a considerable amount of time researching other libraries, reading articles, and participating in bi-weekly meetings with a group of social workers who work in the library across the United States. In this platform, we are able to ask one another questions, share ideas, and ask for guidance on things that we are lacking or have a concern in the library we're working with. Sometimes it's a safe place to talk about the challenges and obstacles that we are often faced as non-social workers just don't get or understand. I often find myself asking a lot of questions, as this is a new program, and even though everyone sees me as the expert, I do not have all the answers and seek advice and direction from these groups often, as many have been providing services in their library for over 15 years. Some of these libraries provide a variety of services, from re-entry programs, groups, mobile showers, and laundry services. This list goes on and on. We have the opportunity here at IndyPL to make and provide service that will impact the community we serve. I'm happy with the successes that I've had since my first 159 days, but no, there's so much more that needs to happen to meet the 20+ bullet points in my job description. I've enjoyed the accomplishments above, but look forward to setting some additional goals for 2022. Some of my ideas are resource fair, have a program monthly that meets the challenges in the library. I would like to see a system-wide resource fair for patrons that have access to the library. Challenges. With success comes challenges, and I've had my share, and I will continue to address the challenges above, as they are changes that are needed to provide a systematic approach to the library system. Like I said before, I don't have all the answers, but I have the capability to see that the concerns with security are addressed. That comes with communication, training, and sharing of ideas. Staff trainings are in place, with staff need trainings where they can role play and know how to address someone who's having a mental health episode in the branch, and how to redirect that individual without being asked to leave, ban, or trespass from the branch. Coming into a new occupation with a lot of baggage has been hard and difficult at times, and working through those silos that are not open to my solution focus is a challenge. And I've been told no without any explanation or not included in a dialogue to hear my suggestions or point of view. I've said repeatedly that the library is an unofficial day shelter with no support, and the community and staff need to be trained on what the role of the social worker is. And there needs to be opportunities for discussions on how to move forward with one another to address the concerns of our community. Patrons experiencing homelessness, mental health crisis, job loss, and substance abuse should not be left for the library to address without assistance. This is not the library's problem, it is our community's problem to address, and we have to learn to get along with one another and do what is best for our community members who come to the library and are stuck, often lost, or just have given up. So next is what I need, and I have lots and lots of needs, and I'm not going to go through them here. You can see them for yourself, but these needs will help drive my position, help drive the goals that need to continue to grow this program. This is all new, and it will take time for change to move forward. Next steps. I want to thank you for your time, but there's so much more to be done. And it is with your support, we can work towards having a systematic approach to address the needs of the patrons in the library system. But in order to do this, I will need time to develop this program, and 159 days is not enough time. I see this as developing over time and bringing on community partners that can address our patrons' needs. The social worker position cannot be a one-off position and needs to be at the seat of many tables internally and externally to address the large day shelter that it has no support. I look forward to continue to build the social work program where we will have a systematic approach that all branches feel part of the process and the solution. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. Thank you.
We don't have a lot of time to ask a lot, but this is so helpful. Thank you much. I wanted to thank Matt and the team for the work for the digital aspects of the Indianapolis Library. And I mean, the work is incredible and so important. So thank you. Thank you. We're running out of time, but look forward to so much more and engagement. At the last meeting, I asked if we could have a special committee that might even support your work that comes from out of it. And Judge Salinas had said, I think you might recall, we talked about having some way of supporting this work in more efficient ways.
Is this at the board level, at the branch level?
After I talk with you, it'll be discussed with you.
Because we do have a homeless resource committee that we've started internally that is looking at things systematically.
Excellent.
Thank you, Ms. McCall.
So much.
We appreciate your efforts. and your
Thank
work.
you.
John, is that all?
That's the end of my report.
Move on to item 12, future agenda items. At this time is made available for discussion. Items not on the agenda, which are of interest to public library board members, and opportunities given to each of you to submit items for the agenda. You did mention that last month, but you know, I'm still waiting on the email. So whenever you have time, okay?
Oh, this is after consultation with the solicitor.
I want to remind everyone that our next board meeting is January 24th of 2022. Happy holidays, everyone. Be safe. The meeting is now adjourned.